What Breadware does is we do strategic corporate consulting for companies doing IoT initiatives, and we do IoT product development. When I used to say that a couple of years ago, no one knew what I was talking about. When I say that today, most people still get confused and ask, wait, so what type of bakery is Breadware? And in fact, no, we are not a bakery, but thank you so much, Rounds, for having us here. But IoT is going to disrupt and transform the way baking is done, as well as many other industries. And so that's what I'm going to talk about today is just what is IoT and what types of things do we need to know about or should we know about in our businesses and our day-to-day lives. And so I want to thank Dave and Kevin and Jackie and Jody for inviting me here, and I want to thank Rounds. And I hope you enjoy some of this conversation. Let's see how this works. Good. So this should set off an alarm for everyone, right? So anyone who starts a presentation with a definition, that's a red flag, right? That's just either lazy presentation making, and it's a sign of a boring presentation to come. Nevertheless, I thought it was worth defining. So IoT stands for Internet of Things. And really, you can read the words up here, but broadly defined, the way I describe it is the Internet of Things is anything that's not a cell phone, not a computer, but connected to the internet. And it's a new term, but not necessarily a new concept. So really the first, what I would call IoT devices came out in the 1970s. They were ATM machines, right? ATM machines were hooked up to a local intranet, and that was used to verify the usage and the extractions from the ATM. But the term gained more popularity. Really the first device that you may all know of is the Nest thermostat. Anyone here have a Nest in their homes? One, all right, one, two. So the Nest, this was a device that it would learn your behavior, learn your patterns. It would always keep the home at the right temperature that you wanted it. It was a small thermostat connected to the internet. And really what the Internet of Things has created is it's this seepage of the internet into the physical world, right? Now all of a sudden you have this combination of physical products with software, and it's enabled many new possibilities. And this is what I want to talk to you about today. From wearables, from Fitbits to smart cars, Teslas, to a lot of the industrial automation that we're seeing. These are all IoT developments that are creating many new opportunities for businesses. So I often find in business as well as anywhere else, it's helpful to define things by what they are, but also by what they are not. So let's talk about what an IoT device may not be. So an IoT device is something that's aware. It's aware of its surroundings. It's got sensors on it. It's got sensory capabilities. It may not have the 5 senses that humans have, but it's got some senses regardless. If it's not sensing its environment, it's not an IoT device. IoT devices are autonomous. So they're able to collect information and then they upload it to the internet either automatically or based on some sort of trigger if a threshold's crossed. You don't have to manually collect the data, and that's important. If you have to manually do it, it's not an IoT device. And they're actionable. This is an important point. The data that's collected is used for something. It's used to provide a service. It's used to inform decisions. If the data is just collected, stored, no one looks at it, it's not an IoT device. So we sort of talked about what Internet of Things is, but let's break down the actual devices in a little bit more detail. So what's so interesting about this space is that, again, you're combining software and hardware. And in reality, to build these things, I always say that you're combining like every engineering discipline from the last several decades into one little tiny gizmo, right? And it's like being a little facetious, but it's real. It involves electronics design, it involves manufacturing, it involves software, it involves web, it involves networking, it involves security. There's a lot that go into these little devices, even like a small Fitbit. But each one of these devices is going to have 6 consistent themes. And so this is what they're made up of. Sensors. So all devices have sensors. Fitbits have little motion sensors. They can detect when you're walking, right? The Nest detects the temperature of the house. So the sensors are called different things, terminals or endpoints, but an IoT device is going to sense something. And then transportation. The data has to get extracted from the device into the web so that you can access it anywhere. And so these devices, they'll often be either wired or wirelessly connected. And if they're wireless, it's going to be something like Wi-Fi or cellular or Bluetooth, some sort of mechanism to extract the data from the device. There's going to be data storage. So there's going to be a cloud aspect of the devices. This is where the data lives and it's accessed. There's going to be analytics, right? If you're only connecting the data and you're not doing anything with it, what's the point? So the data is analyzed, and from it, we're able to make decisions. Cars are able to drive by themselves, right? Because they're able to see what's around them. So there's analytics. There's control. And this is important. So the data that comes off the devices, we're able to analyze it, and then we're able to use that to make decisions to actuate items around us. The Nest is able to regulate based on what it detects about you and what it detects about the environment. It's eventually able to control your home climate system. And then finally, the data is shared. What's so interesting about many of these devices, and I'll get to it, is it's not actually the physical product that's often the most valuable. It's the data that's collected from 1 million of these products deployed across the US, right? Like, do you think Amazon's more happy about the fact that they sold as many Amazon Alexas they did, or the amount that they learned about everyone that has the Amazon Alexas, right? So that's kind of the quick spiel about an IoT device and what it is. But let's talk about why we care. And this is why we care. Like, that's a line going up and to the right. And, whenever you see lines go up to the right, it's worth stopping and figuring out why that's happening. So over the last 10 years, the number of IoT devices has just exploded. And in fact, this graph is a graph from a Verizon survey. It's not exactly the number of IoT devices, and you may not be able to read it. Those are billions there on the left column. But it's the number of IoT devices that are being monetized. And it's been growing on a rate of 28% per year. So for reference, that's like 10 to 15 times the rate of the GDP growth or the rate of inflation, right? It's just a phenomenal growth rate. And to have sustained that long is very unique. And what's pushing this growth, like the devices are cool, the technology is cool, sure. But what's pushing the growth is business. What's pushing the growth is dollars, right? Because businesses are finding value in investing in this technology. And there's a whole bunch of reasons, but if you boil it down to the 3 biggest umbrellas, there's 3 reasons why a business would invest or why they would purchase IoT systems. And that's to improve experiences. So these products can provide enriched experiences. This is a big one. It's important. It's to accelerate their own business growth or improve their own business operations. And then it's about safety, increased safety. So what we're going to do next is just kind of step through these 3 topics, and I'll give you a couple of examples and clarity on why businesses are investing and what you as business owners or owners of these devices should be thinking about and watching for. So let's talk about improved experiences first, because I think this one's the most fun, or maybe the most scary. It depends on your feeling on the whole space. So by virtue of this unique element of the Internet of Things, where all of a sudden now we've blurred the lines between what is software and what is a product, there's many new opportunities that have been opened up. And some of the higher level ones are here. You can make products that are more personal. You can make services that are faster and better. You can improve access. You can enable new services. So what do I mean by that? Well, let me give you a couple examples. More personal. So that Nest that I was talking about, that's certainly something that's personalizing. That's a thermostat that responds to you. What about the Amazon Alexa? I'm sure some of you own the Alexa here. When you use it, sure, it provides a lot of conveniences, but you'll also notice that the ads that come to you from Amazon are now much more personalized, right? Well, they have a lot of extra information and data to leverage to be able to provide you a more catered experience. And what about this image? Some of you may have been into the mall recently and seen one of these. This is a booth that you can go into. Takes a scan of your body, and then it recommends the clothes you should buy. Makes the shopping experience much easier, right? Because not only will it recommend the clothes you should buy, it can show you what you would look like in those clothes. So you go in there, you see a picture of yourself in a bathing suit, you're good to go, right? So, more personal devices, and this is enabled by that software capability that runs on top of the device. They can cater it to you as it goes. Faster and better. So I think the most dramatic example that we've seen of this in the last few years is the Uberization that's destroyed or at least dramatically modified the taxi industry, right? Now, we're going to see this happening in other fields as well. What's going to be most quickly transformed, I predict, is the shipping and logistics industry. Right now you have DHL, UPS, FedEx. But what we're going to see is more transparency and faster and more decentralized services for shipping and logistics. And we're in Reno. We're in one of the hearts of drone technology and drone research, right? So we're not too far away from when you purchasing something on Amazon and it gets dropped off on your porch an hour later, and you wave goodbye at your friendly neighborhood drone, right? This is all IoT that's running that stuff. So enabling access. So what's very interesting about these IoT devices is that you can almost Trojan horse in a good way, but you can Trojan horse software services and get them to underserved communities that didn't have them before. IoT devices are being deployed across countries that previously have not had access to financial institutions. They can use these devices. They aren't cell phones, they're lower cost, but now all of a sudden they have access to banking and financial resources. In the same way, we're seeing a lot of very intelligent devices in the medical field. So devices that seniors can use, they're at home, they're similar to Fitbits that the youth use to track how many steps that they use each day. And if they don't get enough, they do this, right? So they can hit their 10,000. But very similar sentiment devices to that, better used for seniors. So seniors can monitor their quality of life. They can live at home, live independently longer, and they can live independently healthier than they were in the past. And then in a very similar regard, not only are we enabling new services to new communities, but also in new physical locations. One thing that most people don't realize about the cars of 2018 is that they are just a haven of sensors. In fact, there's more sensors in a car that you would drive today than in a 737 Boeing jet that you would fly in from here to New York. And I think one of the biggest testaments to this fact over the last couple of years was done again by Reno semi-local Tesla. So the Teslas, I think they did one of the most amazing things. They did. So that's the product mindset. The other reason why companies are investing in IoT is to improve their companies. So improve revenue, increase their top line, improve operational efficiency, increase their bottom line, or to find new ways of doing things. So in terms of improving revenue, what's very interesting about these IoT devices is that companies have changed their mindset in what it is they're charging for. And let me give you an example. I think this one's somewhat visceral. How many people here own a drill, a handheld drill, have it in your garage? Okay. How many hours per year do you use your drill? Like 5 hours a year, maybe. That seems like optimistic even, right? But you're glad that you have it when you have it, right? And so if the drill companies, and trust me, tool companies are thinking about this, and they're deploying it as well. If they could charge you just for the time that you used your drill, and they charged you $1 a minute, $1 an hour, they would make more revenue than they do now, and you would be paying less. It's phenomenal the way this works out. And so you can't buy drills that do this yet, but this analogy is mapped across several different industries, particularly for heavy equipment and industrial equipment in factories. But they're switching to this business model where they're charging per use, charging per value, rather than charging for the item. And they're making more money doing it. Very interesting, very important. Now, increasing operational efficiency. So companies can make more money, but they can also spend less. So many companies are investing in intelligent lighting, intelligent HVAC, intelligent electricity, intelligent, door locks in their facilities. Because if your lighting is intelligent, if you can see that there's exterior ambient light, it's going to reduce light and your electricity bill is going to go down. And the companies that have deployed this successfully, it's quite impressive the amount of energy savings that they can capture. Now, this is one that is pretty close to my heart and I think is exciting, is that companies are finding new ways of doing things. With the rise of the Internet of Things and this kind of mashup of hardware and software that it's brought with it, there's been a big rise of the DIY community, do-it-yourself, and the hacker community and the maker community. And many businesses are leveraging this in ways that I think are very healthy. For example, they'll hold a hackathon because they want to solve a particular problem. They've sat themselves in their conference room for the last couple board meetings, can't figure it out. So they invite a hackathon, they invite folks from the community to just come and think about it in a new way. Work for 48 hours, see what happens. And oftentimes these types of ideas will be adopted. One of the companies that we're working with that I think brought a very unique solution to an old marketplace is in the trash and waste collection industry. They were finding that a lot of money is spent on the operators that are driving the trash collection truck to the various trash cans and then finding that the trash can is empty, or the dumpster rather, in the industrial dumpster. So proximity sensors were installed in the dumpsters, and the trash collection folks would then only drive to the ones that were full. Turns out that simple thing improved the efficiencies by sometimes up to 90% in terms of the routes that they would drive. So then the last one, improving safety. And so we'll go through these quick, but it's really about workplace safety, regulation compliance, and then what's this last one? Protecting remote assets. So particularly for industries that are heavily regulated, mining, construction, electricity, transportation, there are new legislations that affect regulation that come out every single year. But if you have a smart grid, right, where you can automatically push an update to it, just like Tesla could cause their cars to update overnight, push updating the regulation when it comes out is simple. It's straightforward. And what's important is there's an audit trail. You can show that you did it, this was deployed, the grid is adjusted. There's no manual IT or effort required to go out and implement this. It happens seamlessly. In the same place with the workplace. We're here in Nevada, we have Virginia City just up the road. Like, we're all familiar with the stories of the canary and the gold mine, right? And the canaries, from what I understand, were semi-effective, right? But, the canary of 2018 is the IoT sensor. You have sensors deployed on the equipment, in the workplace, sometimes even on the worker. And these sensors are able to detect the safety of the workplace. Are there volatile organic compounds in the air? Is the temperature out of imbalance? Are people staying and working too long? Are people too close to hazardous machinery and equipment? And so the companies that have deployed this have really seen dramatic gains in workplace safety. And then finally, equipment monitoring. IoT devices can be used to track high-value assets. When they're shipped, you can make sure that it got shipped and it got received, that the temperature wasn't changed during the shipping. There's IoT locks that you can use for access control. In a way, it's very similar to security cameras that are much more sophisticated, but also much cheaper. So, all right, let's stop talking about what's going on out there. Whenever I give a talk like this, several of the examples that I give make the audience uncomfortable, and probably rightly so. Because it turns out, and this was a study that was just done last year by HP, that of the most popular IoT devices, about 70% of them have critical security vulnerabilities. This doesn't mean that they're gonna break down, but it means that a malicious hacker, properly motivated and properly talented, could corrupt your device. So this is a problem, and let's not get to that real quick. That's a complicated graph. We'll talk through it. So I'm a big proponent of IoT. But nevertheless, the security is something that it's one of the biggest topics of 2018, and it should be. And what I want to do is give you some productive insights to work from. There's many naysayers, and they'll say, well, we have IoT rolling out. There's going to be 8 billion devices. They're all hackable. We're screwed, right? And that's maybe they're right, but it's not a very productive conversation. So just like with Internet of Things, I told you it's not an IoT device unless the data that comes out is actionable. I'm going to say this isn't an IoT presentation unless I give you some actionable stuff to work from the presentation. So the question is, why is security such a big problem today? And what about it, do we need to know, and what can we do to protect ourselves? So this graph is the problem, and let me walk you through it. Over here in the blue, so these blue circles indicate for a customer how important they think security is in their device. And so you can see the circles are clustered at the top. They're like, well, yeah, damn right, I don't want my device to be hacked. I don't want people breaking into my car. I don't want someone hacking it. Security is important. On the right is how much they're willing to pay for it. Oh, you want me to pay more? Okay, all right, never mind, sorry. I'm good with the base model. And it's actually split. You can see in the center 3 different industries. You can see that the automotive industry is actually the worst. People has the highest expectations of security in automotive and the least willingness to pay anything more than base model for it. And so this is very interesting. And it puts companies in a predicament because this stuff is complex. Security doesn't come for free, but their customers are not willing to pay for the R&D, for the deployment, for the enhanced feature set that comes with additional security. Very interesting. So what can you do if you're making purchasing decisions about IoT products? Well, for one thing, it makes sense to buy these products from well-established brands that have legitimacy and credibility in their space. Number one, because they have the budget to get it done right. Number two, because they've got higher risk of a PR outlash if they sell unsecured products. And this one pains me a little bit to say because I'm an absolute champion of the startup community and the environment, but it's a little bit of buyer beware if you're buying a company's first product ever and it's an IoT device. I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but you better do your research first if that's the purchasing decision you're going to make. So the second item here is choose devices with automatic security updates. An IoT device, because it's connected to the internet, it should have push updates, push security updates automatically enabled. Just like you have updates on your computer, your device should have security updates over time to make sure that it's compliant with the latest, greatest standards. Many of these devices have to be deployed for 5, 10, 20 years. We won't even know the types of threats that are going to be available in 10 years, right? So that device has to be able to be updated in the field. Third, and this one's a little bit more hazy, but you can see when you go onto a product, you're thinking about buying it, if it's been designed with privacy and security at its core. You can tell from the company branding, you can tell from the product literature, is this something that's gone not as an afterthought, but as a front and center development approach to this product. And finally, you can actually look up UL certifications. So this isn't end all be all if a product has a UL cert for security, but it certainly means that the company went over and above, and they were making this a priority in this product they brought to market. And so then, what can you do if you have these IoT devices to protect yourself? One of them is don't connect what you don't need to. Yeah, it's awesome to have everything connected to the internet, but if you have 5 smart TVs in your house, do you need to connect them all to the internet? Are you using that feature? If you're not, leave it a regular TV. And on that note, it can be very helpful, either in your home or in your business, to keep these IoT devices on separate network infrastructures than your computer and your IT. Just talk to Target, right? A few years ago, their whole IT system got hacked. Millions of credit cards stolen through the HVAC system. The connected HVAC system was the access point for this, one of Target's biggest security breakdowns in their history. And then other just sort of good practice IT stuff, right? You're going to set up these devices. Don't just leave the stock name on them. Put a custom name, put a custom password. And then the last one's interesting. Be wary of cloud services. So any of these devices are going to host data somewhere. Take a look not only at the device, but where it's hosting the data. Is that a secure source? Because your product is only as secure as the weakest link. So just something to be aware of. You need to look at the physical, the network layer, and then finally where the data is stored. So all right, so that's enough security talk. Do I have a couple more minutes, Dave, or am I about to be shoehorned off?
15 more minutes.
15 more minutes. Oh, I might not be able to take all of it. Nevertheless, I wanted to end with a couple what I thought were interesting case studies and just kind of talk through them, talk through the rationale. Some of them you may agree with, some of them you may think are very bizarre, but these are things that are being done in the world using IoT. So insurance is a very interesting area right now with respect to IoT. Progressive car insurance, so Progressive, the one that I think has third best insurance commercials right now on regular TV, they've deployed a very interesting model where you can take a physical device and put it in your car, and it tracks your driving performance, right? So historically, your insurance rate for your automobile is based on what type of automobile you have, what age you are, what gender you are, and how many traffic violations you formula. Now they have the opportunity for so much more data. And so this is called UBI. I believe it's called usage-based insurance. That's what Progressive has coined it as. And the way that they sell it to you is they give you the device for free, And if you put it in your car and you drive well, and they can tell by how fast you accelerate, how hard you slam on the brakes, right? How fast you drive over the speed limit. If you drive well, your insurance rates go down. And they're very explicit. Your insurance rates cannot go up with this device for now, right? For now. But nevertheless, I think very interesting case study for how IoT is being deployed right now. And insurance in general winds up being an access point often for businesses to start exploring in the world of IoT. Because insurance companies are very interested in ways to reduce claims. So often businesses, if they're interested in deploying an IoT solution, can go to their insurance company and say, hey, I'm interested in doing this. I think it's going to reduce their insurance claims. Oftentimes the insurance company will reduce the rates of their insurance for a company that's thinking about investing in IoT. Then the company can use that reduction to finance that IoT spend. Very, very interesting things happening in the market right now. All right, let's talk another case study. Elevators and escalators. So it turns out when an escalator breaks down, it really sucks. Because there's no easy way to access the control panel. I'm sure you've seen this in the malls, the airports. Someone has to go and literally rip up the ground in the escalator, muck around in there, see what goes wrong, see what's gone wrong, and repair it. And it almost always shuts down the escalator for at least a day. What Schindler has done, and they make elevators and escalators, is they've deployed connected predictive maintenance sensors in all of their systems. So it turns out that an escalator, you can very quickly identify if it's about to break down because it starts to groan and mumble, and and there's different characteristics in the actuators. So Schindler now monitors for that. They can detect when an escalator or elevator is about to go into a breaking point. And before that happens, they can schedule maintenance when the mall is closed, go in there, get out, they know exactly what to fix. Dramatically improved their value proposition to their customers because they can sell essentially no downtime equipment. All right, another driving one. You guys will have to tell me if this one's more weird or less weird than the Progressive Insurance UBI model. The state of Oregon is looking at a new way of dealing with the gas tax. Their feeling is that the gas tax doesn't charge the cross-section of consumers in a fair way. They instead feel that the gas tax is supposed to be used to fund transportation and roadway maintenance. So they want to charge per mile driven. So what they've done is they've started a program where you can opt in. They give you a device that goes in your car and you pay 1.5 cents per mile tax that you drive. And any gas tax that you pay gets reimbursed to you in your taxes. It turns out, well, I suppose it depends how much you drive. Their argument is that on average, the average person is going to be paying less, but they think that it's a more fair way of allocating taxes for transportation-related work. And I think that there's arguments on both sides on this one, but a very certainly forward-thinking, at least technology-wise, initiative by the state of Oregon. And then finally, this is Charlotte, North Carolina. They're one of the most advanced smart cities, so to speak, in the United States right now. They've deployed a citywide measure to reduce energy utilization by 20%. And the way they've done this is all the downtown buildings have hooked up all of their systems, their utilities, gas, electric, lighting, to this smart grid, and it's now regulated by IoT sensors. In just a couple years, they saw a 10% reduction just from this IoT grid enablement. And other cities are following suit, but they're right now sort of the trailblazer, forward thinker, and the way that this can be implemented in a smart city. And with that, I really don't have any more. So thanks so much for listening, guys. I'm happy to take any questions. Yes, please, Jackie.
You said you could tell when you buy a product pretty easily whether or not it's built with privacy and security in mind. How do you do that? What are you looking for?
So the question was, when you buy a product, an IoT product, how can you tell if it was built with privacy and security in mind? So what you can't tell easily is if the product is actually secure, or if the privacy concerns are actually good. But there are the 4 metrics that I gave you. Like number one, if you buy from a larger, more established company, that tends to be safer. what I meant with the privacy and security in mind is a company launching a product, if they've started from the very beginning, the very architecture of that product with security in mind, it's going to be part of that product's identity. You're going to find literature about it. You're going to be able to look it up and find that they did their own case studies and that they had hackers trying to hack it. The hackers weren't able to. It requires a little bit of research, but that's something that you wouldn't find necessarily on an Amazon 4 or 5-star review. But if you kind of look up some of the secondary information around the product, you can see if that's something that they've taken seriously or not. Please.
My impression is that anything connected to the internet can be hacked. Even the NSA and RSA security have been hacked. So can you actually provide 100% security?
So we're getting a little philosophical. Really, I would say the reality is that for any product, no matter how well it's made, create a sufficiently sized army of sufficiently experienced and talented software hackers, you run the risk of it being corrupted. The way that security is thought about in the industry is you have a security footprint. And really what this means when people talk about that, it's the vulnerability of the device. And it's sort of this equation of how likely people are to want to hack the device is number one. Then number two, what is the cost or the damage if the device is successfully hacked, right? So if both of those numbers are high, the device has a very high security footprint, and they're going to need to invest a lot more into security. If it's something that no one wants to hack, and even if someone did, it doesn't do much, I mean, they should still bother to follow the basic protocols,
Right.
but they're going to be subject to very different standards.
Just not a likely part.
Yeah. That doesn't fully answer your question, but your question is hard to answer. Yes, please.
So what exactly does Breadware do?
Thank you. So Breadware, I mean, we're a Reno native company, and we started doing product development for companies that were looking to get into this world of Internet of Things, but didn't have the in-house staff to do so. Maybe they only had mechanical engineers because in the past they'd only made chairs, right? But now they want to make connected chairs. They want to be able to tell, their users how long they've sat in the chair and if they have good posture or this or that. Bad example, but actually not that dissimilar of most of our clients, right? So in that case, they don't have the electrical, they don't have security, they just don't know what they don't know. So they'll come to Breadware, they'll describe what they want to build, and we'll build the product for them and we'll ramp it up through manufacturing. So that's how Breadware started. As we've grown, we've offered more services. We'll do strategic IoT services for companies that are thinking about adding IoT to their product lines, but that's about how far they've gotten. Now, they want to know, what does IoT mean and what types of technologies are available? How can they put that into their business model? We'll get involved in that strategic type consulting. And then when they're ready to build a product, we'll hand them over to our product team, and our product team will build the IoT for them. Does that answer your question? Cool, thanks.
April?
Please.
So, this may be an odd question, but with the Internet of Things, in the criminal justice world, where they have to keep track of individuals on parole and ex-felons who shouldn't be in one place or another, how has IoT entered that world? Because I can see many ways of tracking versus employing tons of parole officers, probation officers, and things like that.
That's a good question. So how has IoT entered the world of both forensics as well as sort of the probation and parole officer arena? I don't have firsthand details of that, but I can share a couple other items that may be similar. Number one of the items that IoT has started to do very well is what's called RTLS, so real-time location systems. And historically we've had GPS, global positioning system. GPS can only work outdoors. IoT has enabled you to bring GPS indoors, so you can identify, and often it's used with like stuff inside warehouses. You can identify where anything is in a warehouse, but you could think of the same type of thing for if someone was on parole, like they're wearing their ankle bracelet.
Proximity to schools, proximity to
So you could combine both GPS outdoor location with RTLS indoor location, perhaps have higher degrees of confidence on, where people are and if they're in zones that they should be. In terms of the forensics, that's another side that's interesting, and I don't have firsthand knowledge, but one of the things I love about my job is I keep to work in industries very, very different and learn about these new industries. And heck, we've done stuff from trash collection, like I was telling you about, to smart toilet paper, to manufacturing, to agriculture. So there's many different industries that are investing in this space, and when you talk to them and you learn about their industry and then the way that this connectivity is going to add value to their space, it's certainly a very interesting climate right now. So I wish I had a firsthand example, but I'm sure if you look it up, there's some interesting things that folks are doing right now. Yes, please.
Yes, in regards to elevators, having those sensors there, that's about, will that eliminate the elevator POTS line, the copper line that we have in elevators, where if there's a sensor that shows, hey, the elevator is stopped, it's stuck, it's broken, and then it automatically calls police department, fire department, the alarm company.
Yeah.
Versus having that phone line. What's happening right now is we as a telephone company, we're trying to get away from the plain old fashioned telephone copper lines. So it's AT&T on that end. So I'm constantly looking at this to accommodate the launch companies. So that's one.
Right.
So I guess the question is that if the sensors on the line.
So that's a really good and insightful question, Emily. And it touches on some of the security items I was talking about earlier. The philosophy on anything that's deployed in industrial spaces, and particularly anything that's related to life safety, always fail safe, right? Always fail safe as opposed to fail deadly. So these IoT devices, like they're new, they haven't had years of regulation, they're kind of, we're introducing them into the world. They don't have track record. And so, like in your example, like I would advocate to put in the device, but then still have the backup, right? Like have the POTS line. You see something similar in fire sprinkler systems, right? Like, yeah, man, you can sensorize the hell out of those things and make them very sophisticated. Nevertheless, in the event that the sensors fail for whatever reason, the plain old mechanical system still needs to work. And so that's one of the design philosophies that that we urge the partners that we're working with to take when they look into deploying systems.
How much do the sensors cost? You mentioned using them in a warehouse, but aren't they a lot more expensive than an RFID tag?
They are more expensive than an RFID tag, but the costs may surprise you. RFID tag is, it's basically the dumbest sensor available in the world today. It's just a passive tag that knows its name and can't do anything else, right? And you can get them at volume for cents. As you get a little bit more sophisticated, and so like one step up from an RFID tag is going to be what I would call a Bluetooth beacon. You can buy these things for maybe $1, right, or a couple bucks. And a Bluetooth beacon can do much more sophisticated information transfer, right? Like you can program it to do things, you can have it send code across its channel, but it needs to have a battery in it. So that's where the cost comes from, because RFID tags are passively powered. So it always comes down to the cost of the asset, and then companies do that ROI analysis on how much are they willing to pay to insure that asset.
So how much do IoT sensors cost?
Well, it varies.
Of course.
Yeah, based on the sensor and and the technology. But like I said, you can get Bluetooth beacons for dollars at high enough volume, right? At lower volume, you're going to be paying $10, $20. And then as you get more sophisticated, like let's say you wanted a cellular tracker or a GPS tracker, then you're up in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s dollars for that one sensor.
Is my Google Plus listening to me, and should I be concerned?
I can't give you any better answers than if you ask Google Plus that question. It tells you no, it's not listening and it shouldn't be concerned, right? Nevertheless, right, like, it has to be listening for the keywords.
Right.
Is that information going in sitting places and no one's calling through it? I think that it's reasonable that no one's sitting there listening to it, a human, but I think that like it is being run through algorithms, right? So one thing that happened recently with Google Docs that put quite a bit of people into an uproar is that people that were storing inappropriate information in their Google Docs, inappropriate content, were locked out of their Google documents. Well, how did Google know, right? Google claims that no one looks at the information that you store in your documents, but how did Google know that these people were doing things inappropriate? Well, clearly there's probably bots that are scanning, looking for keywords, right? And then that's how Google was able to determine who needed to be locked out of their accounts. And you could argue for the greater good, but with your Google Plus, that's your answer.
So do I need to turn it off when I'm not using it?
It comes down to what you're trying to keep from Google.
So what federal entity regulates the IoT? Anything yet?
Yes. So the biggest federal entity who provides regulation of IoT is the FCC, right? The same entity that regulates the airwaves for radio as well as cellular systems. And they wound up being the de facto regulation for it because IoT devices communicate over the air channels, right? Most of them are wireless. So every IoT device that's sold needs to have an FCC certification. Some devices also fall under UL, the underwriter's laboratory. That's typically if they're higher power. And if they're deployed in Europe, they have to be underneath what's called the CE mark. Europe's actually a little bit farther along than the US in terms of data privacy and rights of individuals to their own data. And so Europe actually released just earlier this year what's called the GDPR Act. And companies that take that private data and sell it or bring it across state or country lines, virtually do that, are subject to a very hefty fine. It's actually 4% of their global revenue could be the fine if they're seen violating the rights of the data privacy clauses that they have with their customers. We don't have that in the US yet. So we're behind in that regard. But the FCC is the main regulatory body.
So it's the same like if the police wanted to find somebody's Tesla, they would need to get a search warrant and present that to Tesla before Tesla could give them the information?
Well, so this one, there was a famous case last year, maybe 2 years ago now, about the Amazon Alexa that allegedly overheard information related to a murder trial. And Amazon did not disclose the information to the FBI for a long period of time. I believe eventually did, right? And that might have been under court order. I don't remember the exact detail. But yeah, I mean, we're in new water, right? So we're going to continue to hit the technology question. Technology is running ahead faster than policy can catch up to then figure out how to set the proper regulations. So yeah, there are going to be some very interesting Supreme Court cases as this works its way forward.
Use question. They do listen, unless they were just Googling, how do I commit a murder? They were listening. That's
Well,
cool.
if I start Googling, if I go on Google and
How to
ask
kill my
dispose of
ex-husband.
the body,
Yeah.
I mean, it would know that.
Yeah, I mean, if you Google how to kill your ex-husband, like now that's saved in Google. But if you just say it out loud, also if you ask Alexa to query it to Google for you, like that's definitely stored. But that's definitely stored. There's no questions on that. But the question is, if you're just having a conversation with someone, you're not engaging Alexa at all. Is that information stored? Is that information listened to? Yeah.
Question. Okay, thank you.
Since the release of Bluetooth Mesh, how have you seen that start to change the trend in preferred communication methods?
Really good question. And in fact, our resident expert in Bluetooth Mesh is over here. This is Danny, our Breadware COO. He's actually written a lot of literature about it. But Bluetooth Mesh, what's fascinating about it is Bluetooth's been the de facto standard for several years in terms of interoperable device-to-device communication. It's on your phone, it's on your computer, it's on your laptop, it's on the tablets. But it's always had this handicap that it can't transmit very far, right? So there's been these other standards like Zigbee and Google Thread. Amazing, like they can mesh, they've got all this great technology, but they're not incorporated into anything. So why would you build your device on it? So Bluetooth Mesh was a huge step forward by the Bluetooth SIG and I think is going to, I think it's the nail in the coffin for some of those other protocols, is what I believe.
Going once. Any more questions? Great.
And I just want to throw out, Danny's here and Larry Carapo, our VP of Business Development. If you have any questions too, they can also answer them for you. Thanks, guys. You're a really great audience. Thanks for all the great questions.
Thank you. That was wonderful.